One got to go. Daddy, you got one stuck in the machine.
It must be made very clear that our basic program is not one of suspended animation. We're talking about suspended death. In the basic program of suspended death, it is simply proposed that after one dies a natural death, his body be frozen and preserved at a very low temperature, which will prevent further deterioration for an indefinite period. The body will be damaged by the disease or old age, which is the cause of death, and will be further damaged by our current breathing methods. But it will not decay or suffer any more changes. Whatever condition the body is in when it reaches the storage temperature, that is the condition in which it will remain for as long as it is necessary to keep it. The best informed opinion indicates that a body cooled by liquid nitrogen can be stored without significant changes or deterioration for a period measured at least in years and probably in centuries. The body can be thought of as dead, but not very dead. It cannot be revived by present methods, but the condition of most of the cells may not differ too greatly from that in life. We need only arrange to have our bodies, after we die, stored in suitable freezers against the time when science may be able to help us. No matter what kills us, whether old age or disease, and even if freezing techniques are still crude when we die, sooner or later, the technicians of the future should be equal to the task of reviving and curing us. By preserving our bodies in as good a biological condition as possible, it is clear that you and I, right now, have a chance to avoid permanent death. Many laymen, and even many physicians, have the impression that the body must be frozen within a few minutes after clinical death to have a chance of revival. The important point is that a man dies little by little, usually in imperceptible gradations, and a period of grace before all the body cells die is measured at least in hours, and perhaps in days. The question of reversibility at any stage depends upon the state of the medical art. The phrase irreversible damage only means damage incapable of being reversed by methods so far employed. When we quick freeze a freshly dead corpse, we have someone who is thoroughly dead by current criteria, but who has potential life in almost the same way as a drowning victim who may be helped by a respirator. According to the British Medical Dictionary, death is that condition from which You cannot be revived by currently known means. The key phrase there is currently known means. Implicit is the fact that if further deterioration is prevented by freezing, sooner or later, currently known means will be adequate, and the body will no longer be regarded as dead. So the very definition of death depends upon the current state of the medical art. At any given point in the future, the state of the medical art, hopefully, will be greatly improved. Therefore, our present definition of death will be hopelessly outdated. The key consideration is that burial is final, whereas freezing commits you to nothing except a second chance. Many people want information. These people are on our permanent mailing list. The complete list of everyone who has ever written to us for information for whatever reason. Scientists, Alex Comfort is one. Jerome King Sherman is another. Cryobiologist. His editors of science fiction magazines like Campbell of Analog. I would say the total list approaches 10,000 names. If anybody is a clearinghouse for all the information on cryonics, there is Saul Kent, who compiles it and gets most important parts of it into our newsletter. He answers practically all of the mail, thousands of letters. Of course, his most important job is single-handed editorship of the cryonics report. He does this all on his own time and pretty much at his own expense. There are 3 major cryonics societies in the United States and 13 cryonics coordinators. There's 3 foreign cryonics societies, the Cryonics Society of France, the Cryonics Society of Austria, and the Cryonics Society of Spain. Each of these get our literature, a package of our newsletters each month.
They've done some experiments on animals on individual tissues. Sperm has been frozen and then reanimated. They've done it with different tissue banks. With individual tissues, they know that this can be done. It can be frozen in liquid nitrogen. It can be revived. Of course, they've never done it. They've never revived a whole anything, let alone a human being, yet. Wrestling an alligator.
It is like wrestling an alligator. Where you can't stroke the tank on the belly and it won't go to sleep. Many circumstances of death in the near future will pose a painful and nearly intractable problem for the next of kin. Substantial funds may be lacking. Medical cooperation in hospital facilities may be lacking. Death may come unexpectedly, and the body may not be found immediately. In the immediate future, it will take an unusually strong and resourceful person to undertake freezing single-handedly. Clearly, the freezer or capsule is more attractive than the grave, even if one has doubts about the future capabilities of science. With bad luck, the frozen people, or cryonauts, will simply remain dead, as they would have in the grave. But with good luck, who knows? Linus Pauling, speaking in a general sense not so long ago, said, "The great discoveries of the future, those that will make the world different from the present world, are the discoveries that no one has yet thought about. I know that discoveries will be made that I have not the imagination to describe, and I am awaiting them full of curiosity and enthusiasm.
My first day at helping get out the newsletter. Who was it said never volunteer?
The Times of New York newsletter, which is basically Saul Kent's creation, goes to all of the states of the United States, practically all the foreign countries. It even goes to Russia, to Dr. Nagowski, who is the world's leading authority on resuscitation. But the last package to Nagowski came back unopened, with strange cryptic stamps in Russian all over it, and that doesn't look too good. This list runs from scientists to celebrities.
I remember putting Steve Allen's copy on the California stack.
In this way, we get our message across. Constantly keep the idea and the program before the public's eye.
A lot of people like to talk about cryonics, usually in polite little groups over coffee and cake. But one man is physically doing the work to get people frozen, and that's Curtis Henderson. To freeze someone on death might seem unconventional. Well, I did what was natural for me. But when people see cemeteries, they think of the pretty green grass and the pretty flowers and the trees, and it gives them a feeling of peace and perpetual care, which means mowing the lawn. Whenever I pass a cemetery, as far back as I can remember, I never saw the green grass, the flowers, the trees. I always had the visions of decomposing bodies, worms, rot. And this is the thing that I had to avoid from my father. The dry ice box, it looks like a hope chest. It's a very pretty looking thing. It doesn't look at all like a coffin or anything. And knowing that I did avoid the distastefulness of the grave, knowing that my father is perfectly preserved. I mean, you can call the capsule the ideal tomb, because it can do what the most expensive, most ornate mausoleum can't do. In this capsule, you do have perpetual preservation of the body. Even if nothing more ever comes of it than that, you do have perfect preservation. Now, I will admit, I approached the dry ice box with fear and trepidation. I didn't know what I would find. The last time I saw my father, he was alive. And when I did see him in the dry ice box, perfectly preserved, just looking for all the world like he's asleep, I had the first sense of genuine peace. Just, a sigh of relief. The first peaceful moment I had since he died. My father was 42 years old, was never sick a day in his life, had just had his annual checkup, was given a clean bill of health from the doctor. 2 days later, he was dead. It happened at home in the evening, at night, and they said it must have been a heart attack, but they don't know. He never had a history of heart trouble. My father was a very vibrantly alive man, one of the most vibrantly alive men you never want to see. He was so inconceivable. Just think of him not being alive anymore. My natural reaction was rage. I just wanted to strike out. In a way, I did. When my uncle, my father's brother, he came up to me and he said, "Julian, this is your uncle." You know, I've known this man all my life. And that was it. I just tore out the door, the front door, and I slammed the thing with such force that I heard the glass shattering when I was halfway up the block. And I just walked. And when I finally stopped, I found out I'd gone 3 miles. And then I took off for our summer place, and I stayed there, just doing logical things like smashing things smashable, punching holes in walls. In fact, our next-door neighbor called my mother and said, "Come do something, your daughter's going to burn the building down." I wasn't really going to burn the building down. I hadn't even given any indication I was going to burn the building down, but that gives you an idea of my reaction. The strange thing was that I didn't really think about freezing, about cryonics, for a day and a half. My mind went blank as far as logical action. I'd seen Professor Robert Ettinger, who wrote The Prospect of Immortality, which started this whole cryonics movement on various TV programs, and I'd known about the process. It was an alternative to burial or cremation, a natural thing. When my mind finally cleared, I called Professor Ettinger in Michigan, and he gave me the number of Curtis Henderson, president of the Cryonic Society of New York, and of Cryospan Corporation, who actually does the freezing.
Actually, Krauss-Bent Corporation is the operating arm of the Cryonic Society of New York.
I called Mr. Henderson, and he took it from there. And my father was frozen. I made this film to show people what this looks like. There's nothing at all frightening about it. It seems my reaction would be the best criterion of that. Ideally, the initial stages of freezing should be started immediately upon death, which can be done if you're dying of some slow, debilitating disease, if you're in a hospital. And my father was perfectly healthy, had no intention of dying, and just died. So by the time the first steps of freezing were taken in his case, he had been dead for 3 days. Curtis Henderson immediately put him in a dry ice box for the initial cool down. First, a substance of glycerol is perfused through the body to protect the tissues from freezing damage. Then there is the transfer, taking the person. Professor Ettinger likes to say the patient. Actually, it's taking the body out of the dry ice box and placing him in the capsule and putting the liquid nitrogen into the capsule. Once you put in the capsule with liquid nitrogen, that is your permanent storage state. As Curtis Henderson likes to say, whenever it comes time for freezing, there has to be one relative who just says, that's it. Over all the objections. There's always objections from somebody. This one person with a strong enough personality.
Who is really a rhinoceros gonna go through to make it happen?
I knew this was the thing that had to be done, but as a completely selfish thing for myself. I could not go on with my own normal existence, thinking of my father decomposing in the ground. It was as simple as that. But I knew that for my own peace of mind, this had to be done. And it was done. The capsule is made to hold 2 people. They're standing back to back on slides. It's the most practical way to freeze people. The contract that I signed called for $8,500 as an initial payment and approximately $1,000 a year for maintenance. The capsule is made by the leading manufacturer of cryogenic equipment for all purposes, made by Minnesota Valley Engineering. It's called the MDE capsule. What they are, in effect, are
Self-contained
thermos bottles about 9 feet tall. And they're dependent on nothing. The liquid nitrogen has a specific boil-off rate, so all you have to do is replace liquid nitrogen at specific intervals to maintain the temperature. In a sense, when you freeze someone, you do, in a way, avoid the absolute cutting off that death would normally mean. Because you're not really cut off completely from the person. Because the lids come off, you can see the person anytime you want to. Skin tone is perfectly natural. Eyebrows, eyelashes, there he is. You can go back and visit whenever you want to. Say hi. Which to me makes a lot more sense than anyone going to visit a grave, smiling benignly and placing flowers on the rot underneath. Going to visit the capsule, to visit my father. At least I see him. And when I pay for perpetual care, I know it's to maintain his body in perfect preservation, not to maintain any trees or grass.
Professor Ettinger's main premise is
That the bodies would be frozen now and stored. And then in the future,
scientists might be able to restore these people to life.
now that is for the future.
10 years ago, did you really think you'd see live TV pictures of a man walking on the moon?
What I'm saying is anything is possible. But if it happens, fine. That's when my father will get his benefit if he's brought back to life again. But for the present, I have my benefit. I get my money's worth. I got what I paid for. I got peace of mind. I got satisfaction.
The capsule is more attractive than the grave, even if one has doubts about the future capabilities of science. With bad luck, the frozen people, or cryonauts, will simply remain dead, as they would have in the grave. But with good luck, who knows?
My father, the cryonaut. A euphemism, but I like it.
But with good luck, who knows?